Welcome to For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where we discuss amazing books written by talented authors. For Book Lovers Only Live Radio is a proud member of the Village Connector Media Network. If you love books, we have a home for you. Now time for your host and chief book lover, Rob Brown.
Hello, book lovers. Welcome to For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where if you love books, we have a home for you. My name is Rob Brown, your internet radio host and chief book lover. Welcome to the show. We are really excited about today's guest, author Ronald M. James of the Sammy Shovel series. I love detective stories, so I'm really excited about today's interview. Happy to interview him. But first, I want to take a moment to formally welcome all of our listeners and our viewers. If this is your first time joining our broadcast, welcome. We'd like to invite you to join our Book Lovers Club at no cost. We keep our club members posted about new authors, new books coming out, book fairs in your area, and free contest giveaways as well. You can win free coffee mugs, T-shirts, baseball caps, all kinds of great stuff. You can join in one of two ways. First, you can visit www.forbookloversonly.com. There'll be a few pop-ups on the website that you can go ahead and input your name and your information, your email address, and you're instantly a member. Or you can just text the word book to 301-321-8887, and then you'll receive a message with a link. Click on the link, then fill in the form, and then click Sign Me Up, and you're automatically a member. We are so excited to welcome you to the club that we'll give you a free gift just for joining, so make sure that you join today. Now, introduction for our guest. Our guest for today was born during the Great Depression, and as a toddler watched WPA men build new streets. And for those of you who may be a little rusty on your U.S. history, WPA is an acronym for Works Progress Administration. It was one of the agencies created by Franklin Delano Roosevelt during the Great Depression and the New Deal in the 1930s. This author's playmates were a Red Ryder wagon, a small black satchel, and some rocks. He used his imagination and had conversations with mythical street workers that soon bloomed into fashion fantasies by age 4. He used cardboard boxes to create fun spaces for his neighborhood playmates to enjoy, and he later told stories all through high school. In college, he abandoned writing and studied architecture. After retiring from a successful career in architecture, he wanted to keep his creative juices fluent, so he returned to his childhood storytelling days and joined a writers group. Like architecture, each day he couldn't wait to create, finish, and start new stories. He's written 6 great books. First, the Sammy Shovel series, which I'm really excited about, An Adventurous Night, Too Beautiful for Words, and Waif, a romance novel in The Two Jacks, a mystery novel in Harrington Manor, and a soon-to-be-released new detective novel, Flame Man. Ronald James is our guest author for today. Ronald, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Rob.
So happy to have you as our guest today. I told my listeners that I'm really a big fan of detective books, so you're a very special guest for us today.
Well, that's why I enjoy writing them.
So first of all, I want to go back into your background of being an architect. It's a very interesting story of how you kind of fell in love with architecture. Tell us that story.
Well, actually, it started in when I was about 4 years old. I was outside, and the children, as they like to do, was one on each end with a rope, and people would jump in, and they would do rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I would listen to them because I was too small to jump on the rope at that particular time. Yet one day, one lady, the young girl came by, and she said, well, could she have a go at it? And they said, well, sure. So they couldn't stop her. She just kept going and going, rich man, poor man, beggar man. She just kept rattling them off. And all of a sudden, while I was standing at the curb, I heard her say the word architect. I had no idea what the word meant, but I had a euphoric experience at that particular time that went from my toes all the way up through my fingers, my head, and I knew instantly that that's what my life was going to be, was an architect. I had no idea even what the word meant at that particular time. But that was ingrained in me, and so all through school, I never had to think about what was I going to be. I already had knew I was going to be an architect.
That's great that you knew it at such an early age. Now, it's interesting because you equate architecture with writing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, in architecture, you have to use your imagination. When a client comes in and he wants something done, you have to take the items that he has in mind and put them into systems that will work for him as far as integration between whether this company or whether this department or that department works together very well, and then create a skin to fit all these particular items in, and that's creation. Well, when you write, you have to also create. You have to create out of your imagination. If you do mysteries, the fictional mysteries, like I do, and so if you want to be successful, you have to use every whims and things that you possibly could think of in order to create those stories. I love it.
I see. And you write mysteries and you have a detective series. Tell our viewers and our listeners about Sammy Shovel.
Well, he is at the beginning, is a very nasty detective. He's nasty because he lost his mother and father and his partner within 6 months of each other, some 5 years before. And he hated the world. He hated everybody around him. And he was very snotty about anything that he did to anybody. He didn't really care because he just lived to exist, because he didn't care about the world, or the world didn't care about him. The police hated him. They despised him. But nevertheless, he managed to get a few gigs here and there where he got some money. But I knew that he had to change. And so he gradually began to realize that he couldn't keep living the way he did. And by the second novel, the end of the second novel, the too beautiful for words, he finally meets the woman, capital W, the woman.
Oh.
And that lady changed him completely around. And gradually, as the novels continue, he grew, and he grew into where the police now loved him because he was an asset to their department. Even though he wasn't part of the San Francisco Police Department system, he was a separate detective. They nonetheless felt that he was an asset to them. It's because he was performing procedures according to what their rules and regulations were.
Okay. Now you discussed the nexus or the connection between architecture and writing. Is there potentially a nexus between architecture and detective work, or is there some sort of connection there?
Well, yes, in a way there is, because you have to provide, in order to stay abreast of what is going on in this world, you have to read up on all the latest items that are being presented to you from different manufacturers of why this system is now better than the old system. And you have to evaluate those systems very carefully, because the people who are giving you this information are protecting their company. And as an architect, it is your duty to protect the client, your own client, not the company who is providing you information. And so you have to rewrite their specifications. Sometimes they don't like the way that you rewrote it, but you said, if you want me to use your product, you have to abide by the way that I want this done, not the way that you want it done.
Exactly.
So yes, there is a connection between both writing mysteries, because the mysteries you have to investigate, and in architecture you also have to investigate.
Now, in your detective series, in your first novelette, you introduced quite a few characters in your very first book. Why is that?
Well, it was because I wanted to introduce as many people, whether they be the police department, whether they just be individuals hanging around, that I could use later on in as the books were developed in the future, that these people could come back, and the detectives and the other people then would be related to the first book that I did. And then, in fact, in this one particular first book, there is a young lady that is at a bar, and he is going to sees an opportunity to just follow two thugs, and rather than eat his calamari, he tells the bartender to give it to this lady.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book number 3, which is called Waif, she doesn't appear back into that book until near the end. And that's when he realizes that, when he sees the face on this book of this girl at that particular time, because she was in a yearbook, he looks at her and he says, it was right in front of me all along. He just couldn't see it.
So with regards to the characters and the character development, are they pretty much static? I mean, do they kind of stay the same, or are they more dynamic over the course of the novels? They change somewhat.
Everybody changes in this world. No matter who you are, you all change. And so my characters change as the books develop. Each one of them has their own quirks, and those quirks become more and more evident as the books evolve. And also, I use a card system in order to keep track of who and what these people do.
Right, and I want to talk to you about that, because you have a system where you keep track of all the characters, their names, their idiosyncrasies, all the little details. Tell us about your system.
Well, it's a card system that I see. In addition to going to writers groups, I went to a course that was done by a local. It was called Book Passage in Corte Madera, and there they bring in police department people, they bring in writers, agents, they bring in publishers, they bring in people who clean up crime scenes. It's a 3-day conference, and they bring in very good writers and things like people like that. And one of the writers they brought in that I've met a couple of times there, because I did it for 3 years, it was Elizabeth George. She does the Langley series in Great Britain. She's a very popular writer there, and although she lives in La Jolla, California, and she has a card system. I mean, I just putting this up to show you. Okay. This is the card system that I developed from listening to her. And you can see that that has everything you wanted to know about that particular person.
Wow, that's really detailed.
Everything that you needed to know. And so that's the reason why all my important characters all have a card system. Now, the lesser characters, they just are listed like this type of thing here, very simple, because only used in one scene, and not a critical person that would mean more than just a face in the particular chapter that I'm writing.
I see. Now, with regards to your writing style, what would you say is the most unique aspect of your writing style as opposed to the writing style of maybe other authors that write detective novels?
Well, there's several things. The first thing that is in all my novels, no matter what genre it is is that they all have a lot of dialogue in them. And you say, well, why do you have so much dialogue rather than prose? And actually, dialogue will reveal more than prose will. And for example, I have a little something here that appears in one of my books called the Harrington Manor. And in Harrington Manor, there's a man who is now started out as a child and now is a young man, and he feels he should inherit the estate. And so I wanted to explain something about his character.
So, Ronald, you have the Sammy Shovel series, the detective series, but that's not the only genre that you write in. Tell us about the Two Jacks.
The Two Jacks was a story that actually started in my mind in 1970, when the mainstream theaters started to show porn movies. And I used to think, how on earth can this happen? Now, of course, not that I was against it or for it. It just in my mind it was, how can this happen? So I began thinking about it more and more and more. Started looking at some of the titles that would be in the newspapers. And I began looking at the titles, and they were making fun of everything that they possibly could, except they never touched one thing, and that was a musical. They never had a musical. And so I used to tell my friends, I said, well, what if these two guys got together and they created a musical, and it became a porn movie. And they said, and I started telling them a story about it. And then pretty soon, as time went on, I just completely forgot about it. Well, when I started to write again, I thought to myself, I said, that story wasn't a bad story. It just needed to bring it into the modern world and have it more like a love story,
right,
than just a pornographic story. And so the Two Jacks is a story of two young men, both with the first name of Jack. One is Jack the Lad, the other one is Jack strictly out of Boston. That everything had to be right, where the other guy is loosey-goosey was okay with him. And so then as I started to write it, my editor told me, she said that, you've written a nice story here. He said, but you don't have anything about the actual musical. So
right.
I started to write then more and more about I added in scenes of what the musical was about. And then I actually got two ladies together, and they made a song that went along with the book. I don't know if you ever heard the song or not, but it's a love story,
mm-hmm.
and it is so that's how that one started, and it's fraught with because it took place at that particular time, that the police were involved, the DA was involved, the gangsters were involved. There was more to this than met the eye, and so these two guys were constantly in trouble, trying to deal with things that they had no knowledge that this was creating havoc in the city of San Francisco.
Ah, I see. So most of your novels take place in San Francisco.
The basics of all of them are in San Francisco, except Harrington Manor. Harrington Manor takes place in 1923 for 1 week only. A crime occurs. A patriarch is killed. A cold case file comes to life, and then another Harrington is killed. And so it is a story of treachery in 1923 in the Orange County, where the the rich lived very high on the hog, and the rest of everybody else lived as best they could. But it also introduces the fact that the movie industry was just a budding sort of that the beginnings of the way that the Hollywood would eventually evolve, and it has the Klan in it, because the Klan operated it was very active in Anaheim at that particular time, and it have a lot of stuff about the clothes that they wore, and it travels from New York to Orange County to Mazatlan to Paris, and it has all kinds of people in it, so that it even brings Hearst Castle into it. So it has all the things that were going on at that particular time are in Harrington Manor.
Now, you have an upcoming detective novel. Was it Flame Man? Does that also take place in San Francisco?
Yes, that's still part of the Sammy Shovel series.
Oh, okay.
And that is Flame Man, and it is the fourth book of the series. And in that one, there, Sammy Shovel meets his match, the man who creates nothing but fire hazards in San Francisco. Was actually is very intelligent as a boy, and it shows how he developed the way of creating ways of making a fire that are undetectable in buildings.
Oh, wow. That sounds like, how'd you come up with that idea?
I did a lot of research. All my books, you have to do a lot of research. If you don't do research, you're a fool. You must do lots of research. And if you know the territory, you write it, you describe it very well. If you don't know the territory, only mention it. Don't try to describe it, because people that live there will know you don't know what you're talking about. So you have to be very careful. Now, in all my books, if I go into great detail, I have been there. I have lived there for a while, or I have passed through there, or been there for some period of time. And that even includes Hong Kong and places like that, Japan. So those all are in my books. So if you know the territory, then you write about it. And then also, when you write about it, you have to think about how that would work as you're creating it. Create characters to fit into that particular scenario of where the place, where the thing takes place.
What is the most important thing for an author to consider when they're writing their books?
Well, as I mentioned it just a few minutes ago, the most important thing is you must do research. If you don't do research, that includes sci-fi. If you're going to do sci-fi, you have to really have a vivid imagination. But you've got to do the study what is available for information about our universe at this particular time. Then you can go in to do the sci-fi correctly. You take that knowledge and you write it the way that it was, and the fact that you know that but black energy or black matter and those things that actually exist, and why they exist and what they do. So the entire the way that the entire universe evolves, you have to understand that if you're going to do sci-fi. So research takes place whether you're doing a love story or you're doing any kind of story and you're studying in a certain place, you must do some research on it. And then you have to use a vivid imagination of how you put those things together, unless it's, of course, nonfiction.
Great. Well, that is great advice for those aspiring authors that are watching and listening. And I know people are very interested in your books in the Sammy Shovel series, the Two Jacks, Harrington Manor. I'm going to want to give them your contact information so that they can follow you on social media. They can follow you through Twitter at Ronald James. That's AUTH Ronald James, and they can also follow you on Facebook if they put in the search bar author Ronald James. Ronald, thank you so much. We really had a great time you being our guest today. We're really looking forward to Flame Man coming out. That should be coming out in July. August. Okay, great. Well, we are looking forward to the release of Flame Man, and we wish you the best, and we'd like to invite you back at a future date to talk about some other novels that you're obviously going to be writing. It sounds like you love writing, and we love reading your books.
Well, thank you very much, Rob. It was a pleasure meeting with you and talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Ronald. Talk to you soon. Be sure to purchase copies of all of his books. Let me give you their names again. An Adventurous Night, Waif, Too Beautiful for Words, Harrington Manor, The Two Jacks, and Flame Man that's coming out in August. They're all going to be available at forbookloversonly.com. Make sure you grab your copies. And I also want to make sure that you're following us on social media as well. You can find us on Facebook at For Book Lovers Only, Twitter at FBLONLY, so that's at FBLONLY, FBL only, and Instagram at For Book Lovers Only 15. We're out of time, but thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Rob Brown, your internet radio host and chief book lover, and this is For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where if you love books, we have a home for you. Take care. I'll see you next time.